Hi, and welcome back to My Hometown Cooking, a show all about feel-good food with community roots. We're starting off with season 2. I can't believe it. It feels like we just started the show and I'm actually already calling it season 2. And our first episode is all about the alternative plan when you have plans and everything basically falls through. And so far this day is actually holding suit. So what this recipe is all about is you got a big barbecue coming up and you're really excited to get outside and it's raining and it's not going to be great outdoor weather. So this recipe is going to focus on chicken that you can do indoors and a really feel-good rice dish to make right in your own kitchen. So the recipe is going to use a cast iron skillet chicken, which we're going to start on the stove and then get it into the oven, and then a mango lime coconut rice that you also are going to do right on the stove top. So let's get started. First I want to get my pan started on the stove. So I have this oiled cast iron skillet. Okay, so now that the pan is getting hot, what we're going to do is we're going to start to season our chicken. So I make my own seasoning blend to put on the chicken, but you can buy one pre-made if you already have one that you like. This one actually I put in my mason jar. It has 1/4 cup of chili powder, 1/4 cup of cumin, 2 tablespoons of onion powder, a tablespoon of garlic powder, teaspoon of oregano, a teaspoon of paprika, and then a tablespoon of salt and about 1/4 teaspoon of black pepper. And because I will never ever remember that, I've put a nice little cheat sheet on the back, and so it's right on my jar. So I'm going to put about a teaspoon, roughly a teaspoon on each piece of chicken. And you're just going to spread that on or get it all over your cutting board. So get that really nice and coated. And then I'm just going to put that in a baggie and let it marinate for about 2 to 3 hours. I'm also going to add a little olive oil to that. So let's just put it in a baggie and layer it right on top of each other so they kind of get all that nice seasoning. And I usually put about 1 to 2 tablespoons-ish, or just pour it until you kind of eyeball it and get that nice and marinated. And the best part is when you're done with this, you can just dispose of the bag. You can also use a reusable container if you prefer. So I'm just going to squish that around and make sure all that nice seasoning gets all over the chicken. Because I always want to make sure I keep my cutting board separate, I'm going to put my raw chicken cutting board in the sink to be cleaned. I'm going to put this into the fridge. And oh, thank goodness, I already have one all nice and marinated up. So I have my pan going, it's nice and hot. I want to get this chicken right in there. Oh, it's really hot, it's smoking. Let me turn that down a little bit. Turn my fan on. Hello. So I got my fan on and my chicken pan is really hot with a little oil in it. And we're just going to drop those chicken pieces in. Again, these have been marinated for about 2 hours. You can do it the day before as well. And you just want to get a nice sear on the outside of the chicken. So put that in. I'm going to leave that on for 1 minute to 2 minutes. The pan is on medium to medium high. You want it to be a nice heat on that pan to get that crust on the outside. I also have my oven that's preheated to 375 because once we get that nice golden crust on the outside of the chicken, we're actually going to put that cast iron skillet right into the oven. So if you don't have a cast iron skillet, as long as your pan is oven safe, I'm just going to give my countertop a nice little clean while that's cooking because I want to get our rice started too. But as long as you have a pan that's oven safe, that can go in. I just choose to use the cast iron skillet because it gets a nice even heat and just a beautiful crust on the outside of the chicken. So let's check on the chicken. You can already start to see that when it starts to cook in the pan, it's going to brown on the outside a little bit, and that's what I look for before I start turning over the chicken. I also want to make sure that my pan is hot enough. If I put it into a cold pan, it would have taken too long for it to come up to temperature. Oh yeah, that looks great. So we'll just let that cook for another 1 to 2 minutes. And why don't I grab my rice ingredients and we'll get that all set up. Okay, so it's been about 1 to 2 minutes on the second side of the chicken. So obviously grab your oven safe mitt, and again, slide that chicken in. I'm gonna turn that ring off, and I'm gonna set my timer to about 15 minutes to check on that chicken. And now let's get started on the rice. So I've started my pan with a little bit of oil, probably about 1 to 2 tablespoons. And again, I want to get that pan nice and hot. So the start of this rice, like the start of many of my recipes, starts with the basics that you're going to put in. So you want about a cup of diced yellow onion, 2 to 3 tablespoons of ginger. Now when you go to the grocery store, you're going to get the ginger like this. It's a ginger root. So you take that root, you wash it, and then you just peel off the outer edges of the ginger and get it into a nice shape that you can cube up. And then you're just going to cut that ginger into slices. So you end up with these nice slices of ginger, and then you're just going to quarter that up, add your slices together, and run your knife through it to get these nice little dices of ginger. So I can hear my pan already, so I'm going to get my onions in and get those start to cook. So first thing I put in is my cup of onions into the pan. Oh yeah, nice and sizzly hot. So I'm gonna let my onions cook up for about 5 to 7 minutes. You just wanna get a nice browning on those onions. So let me get that cooking up. Now the other thing you're gonna add to that, like I said, is the 2 to 3 tablespoons of minced or diced ginger and 1 cup of brown rice. And everything's gonna cook in there together. I always rinse my rice. So you just wanna take a colander, your 1 cup of rice, and run it under some cold water. This will just rinse off any impurities on the outside of the rice. And then when you're ready to add it in, you'll be all set. So let me let that drain for a little bit, and let me just go check on my onions. So my pan's a little low. I'm going to turn up my heat. I want to make sure that this is going to get that nice caramelization of the onions. And right now the pan temp is a little low. So the other things that are going to go into this rice is 1 cup of vegetable broth and 1 cup of coconut milk. So I know when you go to the grocery store, it can be a little overwhelming because there's milk, almond milk, coconut milk, cashew milk, soy milk, and it's kind of dizzying when you're looking at it all. So this coconut milk is actually a canned coconut milk, and I can show you an example of that. So any Thai food area or ethnic food area of the grocery store should have coconut milk. I'm going to use a light coconut milk in this recipe. It just cuts the fat down a little bit in the overall recipe. The other thing to know about canned coconut milk is all the fat tends to, or the actual meat of the coconut milk will rise to the top of the can. So when you open it, it can almost feel like this very thick, hard to get through stuff with a bunch of water underneath it. So before I ever open a can, see right now when I shake this, I can't even hear it in there. So I would just keep shaking the can until I can hear it loosening up. And then once I open it up, it would come out with the water and the top of the milk all together. So I'm going to add this together so that when I'm ready to pour it in, it's just ready to go. And I think it's time to add our ginger to the pan. So let me add my ginger to the onions. Yeah, we're getting a really nice browning on the onions and on the bottom of the pan, which is great. So again, that's about 2 to 3 tablespoons of ginger. We'll just give that a quick toss. I actually also always throw in my grains to the pan without the liquid to start toasting those up as well. So we'll just kind of mix all that together. You can already smell the ginger and the onions, and in about 1 to 2 minutes, you're actually going to start to smell a little bit of a toasted rice as well. So let's get that ready to go with our broth. Again, just let that keep going until you start to smell that, and it should be 1 to 2 minutes. And here's the best part. So you're on the stove, you're now going to add your cup of coconut milk and your cup of broth. I'm going to turn that down to a simmer. I'm going to cover it. And 40 minutes later, you're going to have this beautiful rice that's now ready for us to add all the other elements to the recipe. So let's let that cook up for probably about 30 minutes to check it. And we'll be right back. So it's been about 30 to 40 minutes, and all of our liquid was absorbed into our rice, and we end up with this beautiful, creamy rice that has ginger and onions and brown rice in it, and it's just ready for all of our mixings. If when you're cooking this, you test your rice about 30 minutes in and it's still not cooked all the way through, just add about 1/4 cup of liquid back into the mix and just allow it to cook a little bit longer. The other thing is the original recipe that I took this from was actually double this volume. So if you have a large family and you want to make double of all of this, then double it up. It actually would work out probably better with some of the other items that we're going to be putting in. But if it's just 2 of you at home or just 1 of you at home and this is actually a lot of rice, you can actually freeze this when you're done too. So just do with what works best for your family and your scenario. But this is about 3 to 4 cups of rice, and to that I'm going to add 1.5 cups of black beans, which actually equates to 1 can of black beans, which I've actually already rinsed and drained. So we'll put that in. And then it also calls for 1 mango. So I actually cheated a little bit here. I'm not a huge fan of peeling mangoes. There's an enormous pit in the middle of a mango. They're beautiful and they're very tasty fresh. They're just as tasty frozen. So I bought a package of frozen mangoes, diced that up a little bit, and I'm going to add a cup of frozen, thawed, diced mangoes to my rice. I'm just going to mix all that through. What's so great is when the season starts to turn, and which is our season is trying to turn, and we're moving into spring, this is that really kind of, it's been a warm day but a cool night, or it's a rainy day, and this rice just fills you up and makes you feel so good, but it also has some hints of summer in it with the mango. So to that, I'm going to add 1 limed and zested lime. So if you don't know what zesting is, let me show you real quick. So when you get a lime, which these limes have been washed, this is a zester, and you're just going to take the outside rind and zest that up, which is just all the little filings that come off of the top of the lime. So I've already done that, and actually once you've done zested it, just cut the lime in half, put it through a juicer or a little hand squeezer, and you end up with probably about 2 tablespoons of lime juice and lime zest. So I'm going to pour that over my mixture, and even though it doesn't look like a lot, that acid and that citrus adds such a great little flavoring addition to this rice. And if you want more, just add more. And the last thing I'm going to add is about 1/4 cup of diced cilantro. Cilantro is a funny herb. Some people really love it, and some people, actually, it tastes almost a little soapy to them. So if you're obviously one of those people that doesn't like cilantro, you could add parsley to this, but the cilantro really adds quite a nice Southwest flair to it. So let's mix all that together. Oh, and it looks, if I do say so myself, this looks mighty pretty. It's just such a beautiful color. And that's it. That's your mango lime coconut rice with black beans and cilantro. And that's quite a heavy portion. And again, this is probably half the original recipe. So if you wanted to use 2 cups of rice, you would get double this volume. So the last thing we're gonna do is plate some of this up. We have our cooked chicken still cooking, and I'm gonna check that with the temperature, and then we can start plating all this up. So let's get back into our chicken. So let's get the chicken out of the oven. It's been about 15 minutes. Oh yeah. Oh yes, done. It looks amazing. It's got a beautiful crust on the outside, but with chicken, you always wanna make sure that you've cooked it properly. So I have my trusty little kitchen gadget, the thermometer. This is a digital thermometer, which is great. I'm just gonna check it. You want your chicken up to 165. So let's see if we're there. The other thing too to always look for is if your chicken is a clear liquid running out, usually that's another good indication that the chicken is done. And also that the texture of it, when you push on it, kind of pushes back. So it's a nice cooked texture. Oh yeah, we've definitely reached our temperature, which is great. So let's get it out of the pan. Obviously be very, very careful with your cast iron skillet. It's extremely hot. So I chose to do 3 chickens because this would feed my family well for a couple of days. And now we're almost ready to plate. So if you can see, this has got a wonderful color on it. It's got so much flavor from our seasoning blend. And oh yeah, it's nice and moist, and tender, and hot. This is gonna go great. So I kind of started by saying, life doesn't always go according to plan. And this is that recipe you have kind of waiting in the wings for that outdoor grilling that didn't happen, and you can do a little indoor grilling. I know a family that's going through a lot, a friend of mine, Addie LaValle, so I'm actually throwing this recipe out for you, Addie, who's an awesome chef who's gonna join us someday. But Addie's going through some leukemia trials, and she's a little 8-year-old who's pretty special. So Addie, this one's for you. Can't wait to see you in the kitchen with me. So let's plate this up. You got your rice. We'll put some chicken right on top. Whoop, or throw it. You can do whatever you want. Now this would be more of like an appetizer for my meal, but this plate kind of shows you what it would look like. And you're gonna have the protein. If you're a vegetarian and you don't want the chicken on top, then just have the rice. This is a great meal that can attract a lot of different people to the table. And I hope you've enjoyed it. You can find you can find these recipes and all of the recipes from the show on myhometowncooking.com. And again, Addie, can't wait to see you here on the show. And everyone else, I hope you're ready for a great spring. And if you're not, and it's a rainy day, you have a recipe to handle that too. So can't wait to see you next time, and thank you again for joining us.